What's up guys, Josh here. I know I'm not normally the tech and camera review guy. I'm the corporate cringe guy over there on my main channel that makes fun of middle managers. But on this channel, I want to do something a little different. I want to kind of give back. I want to share what I've learned on my YouTube journey along the way. And I want to start off with doing what you can with your budget. So to demonstrate that, I'd like to compare my $1,100 Note 20 Ultra to my $16,000 Red Dragon 6K. Each of these has its pros and cons, right? Like just look at the size for one, and I think by the end you'd be surprised what you can do with phone footage. By the way, if you have any footage that you'd like me to give you feedback on, or your YouTube channel or anything like that, go ahead and send it to me. I'm happy to give you tips on your lighting, setup, audio, all that sort of stuff. Link for that is down in the description. You can shoot me like a Google Drive link, that'll work. I'll also include links to the Red files so that you can download them and play with them if you want. And I'll include links to the phone files so you can download them and play with them if you want. We will be using DaVinci Resolve. It is a free software. I happen to have the Studio Edition since this is what I do all day. But for you guys, it's free. I hope you enjoy and learn a thing or two. To start off, I thought we would take a look at the original cell phone footage. Now, personally, I don't think it looks bad, but it's just not accurate to what I see with my own eyes. That's downstairs behind me, and that's not what my living room looks like. Now, smartphones, they do their own things with their cameras. Number one being that things are way too saturated. Like my Nintendo Switch controller handles here, they're not this bright. Another thing that smartphones like to do is over sharpen stuff. And lastly, smartphones love to make their images look contrasty. They love to separate the colors and the lights and darks. Now to fix this, we'll need to use the color page. First thing we want to address is the saturation. So that's down here. We'll come over here and you can click on it and drag left or right. So let's bring the saturation down. I think already it's looking more like what my living room actually looks like. And then we'll come over here to the mid-tone detail thing, and you can take this and you can slide it to the left a little bit, and this will kind of soften the image. After that, we go to the contrast. So click on contrast and drag it to the left, and you'll notice how the image is getting what's called more and more flat. It already looks a little bit more cinematic, a little bit more filmic. Okay, so let's look at the red footage. So that's, just like this by itself, it's not so bad. Now, while smartphones are fantastic and they can do a lot, they just can't do everything dedicated video cameras do, which is obviously why you buy them. But the main things are, at least in my opinion, are color and dynamic range. If you don't know what dynamic range is, it's basically your camera's ability to capture both really bright and really dark at the same time. So this is an example of dynamic range that I shot downstairs in my basement. I shot this on the Red, and I'm holding the phone in front of the Red so you can kind of see what I mean. If I want to be able to see inside the basement and outside the window at the same time, I can't. On the phone, I can see inside, but everything outside the window is just too bright. It's gone. There's no detail. You can't see these little things like you can on the Red below it. Likewise, it also works vice versa. If I want to see outside the window, well, now I lose everything inside. So I can't have both, kind of no matter what I do on my phone, I can't have both. Then we have the Red here. Now the Red, you get the inside and most of the outside. That is the difference in dynamic range. There are other factors like the manufacturer that you buy from, like Sony and Canon and Red. They all have different dynamic ranges that they put into their cameras. And so it's not something that can just kind of be fixed in post. It's something that is just set in stone on the camera. Now at the beginning of the video, we have the two clips that are pretty close together. However, when you look at the comparison and you can see the window, it's a pretty clear winner. But I conveniently cropped in on my phone footage so that you couldn't see outside the window just next to it, so you wouldn't think anything of it. However, if you're using a phone and there's a shot where it's really bright and really dark, the differences will be glaring. This is much, much harder to fix in post. In fact, I have an example of where I tried to do that the best I could and it looks so bad. This is the best I could do. This is really the best I could do, and I did a lot here. I can show you what it looks like by default. This is what it looked like. I had to expose for outside and then see what I could do to get the shadows and stuff to come back. So that's kind of like the catch to using your phone, is just make sure that if you're going to film, try not to have really bright and really dark in the same frame. Sometimes it's unavoidable, and in that case, you just try to make it as bright as you need for whatever you're focusing on. Another example I'd like to show you is the differences in skin tones and color. Now the Red, like I said earlier, shoots at 16-bit, which is like 1 trillion colors. And phones, well, they shoot at 8-bit, which is nowhere close. And, for all intents and purposes, 95% of the time, 8-bit is, you can get the job done. That's what GoPro uses. That's what the DJI drones use. Some of them are 10-bit now, but most of them are still 8-bit. Like the FPV drone is still 8-bit. And nobody ever cares, right? They make their promo videos and you're like, wow, this looks great. And you don't even know. So let me show you this red clip that I got in my kitchen. Right, it has a nice dynamic range. We can see outside the window. We can see his texture on the skin. The lips look accurate. And then let me show you what it looks like on a phone. Okay, so this is not what the intern looks like. He's not pink and pasty. There's just no texture to his skin, which is funny because you'd think this would be sharper. This would be clearer because the phone shoots at 8K. Now, I think you can come to the conclusion that resolution isn't everything at this point, because everything that I've shown you so far on the phone has been shot in a higher resolution than my Red, which brings me to the point of resolution. Generally, high resolution cameras have one purpose, and that is to reframe and recrop without losing quality. I can zoom in pretty close and still maintain quality when I render it out as 4K. So if you shoot and you mess up your composition, well, now you can just zoom in, crop over, move it up a little bit, and now it's fixed. But other than that, resolution doesn't have a super huge bearing on what makes a good image. It just doesn't. All right, the next test is rolling shutter. Rolling shutter is when straight lines become bendy when you move the phone around because of how the shutter works. So the shutter on cameras, generally, they close from top to bottom. Well, as the shutter starts to close downward, as you move it, then it starts to get different pieces of the straight line and starts to look bendy. That's like my most layman's terms explanation of rolling shutter. Things get bendy when you move the camera. See? It's like the bendy pencil trick when you were in school. I don't know why it does it with your eyes though. So that's on the phone, and then this is the rolling shutter on the Red. Yes, there is some bend. Like this is not a straight line. It's also blurry, but they straighten up pretty quick. Way better than this Jello. This looks like actual Jello. All right, next up we have low light. Now low light is difficult usually for everyone, especially when it's like naturally low light. You know, there's just not a lot you can do. Like if you're outside camping or something, right? Maybe you have a flashlight, but if you just want an ambient low light scene, cameras they don't do so hot. Some have dual native ISO. And then some are Sony's. So, but the Red that I have absolutely sucks at low light, and this phone right here, as you'll see, is not fantastic at low light, but with some editing, you could make it work if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't show the clip for more than a few seconds because after that you start to see it. So this is the Red footage. Yeah, not bad at all, right? So let me show you the uncorrected Red footage of what I was actually shooting. Looks like this. So I changed it, I brightened it up a little bit, and then I add some noise reduction because as you brighten things that were sharp, very dark, it's going to add static, and then you can use noise reduction to remove that static to an extent. You don't want to overdo it because you lose some detail. All right, this is the phone. You can see what I mean by the static happening all around here. Like this doesn't exist on my wall. It's not there. That's just noise coming from shooting in a low light environment on a tiny little opening for light to get into. So if you look at it that way, it's actually pretty good. This is with noise reduction and brightened up just a little bit. But if I want to change the color, like the rock is not this red. It's really not, like with my own eyes. So if I want to change the colors on something like this, if I like drag it over to blue, you can see the image starts to fall apart. Like this stuff here in the middle, it doesn't want to cooperate. It's starting to get blotchy, starting to get staticky. It's not looking good. I mean, this is an extreme amount of blue, but you guys get the point. You may have noticed that the lighting and stuff has changed around me, and that's because this camera overheated, my Sony a7S III, which it hasn't happened yet, but it's been on and connected to my computer all night, so maybe that's why. But anyways, the next section here is about file types. Super boring, but hold on, just hear me out for a second. So this phone right here, it records an 8K H.265. Well, what does H.265 mean, Josh? Well, H.265 means that it's gonna simply destroy your computer when you try to edit it. Now, this computer that I'm editing on right now has 128 gigabytes of RAM and a 3090 And if I try to play my phone clip from scratch, this machine still struggles. So it lets you record a lot of data, so you can get these cool 8K videos at the cost of performance when you go to edit it. Now this phone can also do H.264, which means just regular MP4 files. That's what they both are, but one will have a significantly easier time running on your computer. So that's what this phone does. It doesn't offer a lot of flexibility in post. Whatever you film, whatever you hit record on, and whatever you capture in your camera, that is going to be what sticks. And you only have just a little bit of latitude to change your colors or to bring back the overexposed clouds. Like instead of just a white sky, you want to bring it down so you can see the clouds still. Yeah, you can't do any of that. And that also has something to do with, dynamic range and stuff. But you just don't have a whole lot of editing flexibility afterwards when you film on a phone like this. Okay, so now let's talk about the Red for a second. In the YouTube videos where other people review them, they're just holding them like, here's my Red, but this thing has gotta be probably like 20 pounds. Like it's not, it will leave a mark on my arm. If I'm holding it steady like this, it will leave imprints on my arm. I feel like a lot more people should be like, emphasis on how heavy this is. It shoots in Red Code RAW. What does that mean, Josh? That just sounds boring as H.265. Look, I got you covered. So to put it simply, it lets you fix your mistakes. It gives you the flexibility to fix your mistakes. So if you take a regular camera, or your phone even, you'll notice that once you bring it in, you don't have any options. I kind of drag and drop the highlights and bring up the darks if you want, add some saturation, kind of change the colors a little bit, but you don't get to go back and like refilm it with different settings. And that's what raw footage lets you do. So there's this little camera icon way over here on the left in Resolve. If you come over here and click clip, it gives me all of these options to change my footage as if I was just about to film it, except it's already done and now I can change it. So if I were shooting way too bright and now everything's overexposed and you can't see anything, well, I can come in here, click this little ISO button, and I can change it and bring it down. Now hopefully you didn't mess it up that bad to where these options don't help you. On top of that, you have your basic color tint, DRX, which is for dynamic range if that feature is on the Red camera, but it's not on right now. Shadow, exposure, brightness, those sorts of things. I never really touch any of this stuff. Sometimes I'll touch this, but mostly it's just the ISO. But knowing that if you did mess it up, you have all these options here to come back and correct at least the best you can. And is that worth a $16,000 price point? I mean, probably not. Probably not for most people. Why would you even buy a Red? The thing about a Red is there are certain things that you get with it that you just can't get all in one with other cameras. And now that's becoming less and less of the case. More and more cameras are adding this stuff to it as time goes on, so Red's gonna have to keep up, otherwise they can't be charging these insane prices anymore. I can shoot 6K at 100 FPS. That is pretty good. I can shoot 4K at 120 FPS. I can do that with raw footage. It also has, I think, like 16 plus stops of dynamic range. Stops, that doesn't mean a whole lot to people. It can get a lot of bright and a lot of dark at the same time. So right now this camera is set up to be an EF camera, so this takes EF mounts. I also can take this entire front thing off and change it so it uses PL, which is like the cinematographer high-end Hollywood lenses type stuff. Like each one's gonna cost you like $9,000. Yeah, so EF is the way to go. But if you buy a Sony, right, then you can only use E-mount lenses generally. Whatever the mount they put on the camera, that's kind of just what you're stuck with. You can get adapters, but they don't always work right. Another thing is it comes with a touch screen with false color and a bunch of different focusing methods, which, by the way, this Red has a single autofocus, meaning I can press this button here and it will focus one time on whatever the little focus reticle is on, then that's it. But if I move or the thing moves, you're out of focus. That's it. There's no continuous autofocus. And you do have that on a phone. Now, most cinema cameras don't have autofocus. The new Red, they're trying it, but the way I think about it is, can you imagine if you had autofocus and you set up like a $3 million explosion for your movie, and then the autofocus focuses on the wrong thing? It also can hold these huge batteries. Now, more and more new cameras are allowing you to do this too. Like my Blackmagic 6K also has the ability to mount this, but it doesn't have autofocus either. It can just do a lot of things that not every single camera can do in one at that quality. I'm pretty happy with my Red. To be honest, I use it
all the time. Right now I'm using a Sony. Sometimes I use this if I'm feeling lazy because it has autofocus and great low light. Should you buy one? By the time you get to that point, if you're starting fresh, you probably won't need it. There'll probably be a better camera out. If we're being completely honest, there'll probably be a camera out there that can do everything this Red can in the size of maybe a little bit bigger than this phone. At least that's my prediction, but don't hold me to it. So on this phone here, I can't change the lenses. I'm just stuck with whatever lenses I have, which means if I want super zoom, hopefully it has it. If I want super wide, most phones have super wide. But you can't change the aperture. You can't change how open or closed it is to be able to control your light and hopefully maintain decent motion blur. Now, there's other reasons why you want to change your aperture and stuff too, for like bokeh, low light, all that stuff. But you can't do that on a phone. You can't change any of that stuff. You just change your shutter speed, which as you bring your shutter speed up, your motion blur gets really weird and it doesn't look like real life anymore, and it drops back into that uncanny valley. Phone can get the job done 99% of the time, and no one will even know because nobody's pixel peeping like me, but this is my job, right? So I think over time I've become a pixel peeper, but if you're out there thinking about starting YouTube, a phone is just fine. I think the only thing is going to be your audio. Probably I recommend you pick up one of these dedicated audio recorders and then hook this up and then sync your audio later. Just use the video from this. Don't stand really far away and try to do like a vlog or anything because that's going to sound terrible. But maybe if you're interested, then I can do another video on making videos with a phone. Or you send me your footage and I'll show you how I would edit it. Hopefully this video has been insightful and you've learned a thing or two about cameras, because I don't know, this is like a quick crash course on stuff I wish people would have told me. And this is a lot easier to do when there's people asking questions and giving you feedback so that you can, give the proper input, because I'm not exactly sure what you guys want to know, but I'd be happy to share the things that I've learned. And I am by no means like top level cinematographer or color grader, but I make a lot of short films, I make a lot of skits, and I think you can see the progress across my channel. So anyways, if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, click like, click subscribe. Let me know what you want to see, if you want to see different cameras, if you want me to edit footage from your camera. But all the links that I mentioned at the beginning of the video will be down there for you to check out. And to be honest, I'm pretty nervous about the feedback. So hopefully you enjoy it. I'm sure I missed some stuff. Please be gentle. Other than that, see you in the next one.